Global money supply is now at an all-time high. So, so far, as far as, the money supply, chart is concerned, you're starting to see, BTC pretty much, following, that trend. And again, historically speaking, as we have discussed in the past, if you look at the charts, you do tend to see Bitcoin reacting, positively, to the, M2 money supply, chart. And, as we are seeing money supply, obviously increasing, you are starting to see, Bitcoin picking up traction once again. But let's take a look at what's happening with XRP. Welcome back to the Crypto ZX channel. To the XRP holders, appreciate you guys as always. If you have not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that red subscribe button. Looking across the market, you're starting to see a lot of green across the market, as we can see over the last 1 hour. You are seeing, quite a few coins up, a lot just in the last 24 hours as well. I'm sorry, just in the last 1 hour. And of course, over the last 24 hours, we're seeing multiple coins up. XRP up 7%. And so, of course, in the grand scheme of things, things are looking great. But let's take a closer look and see what's happening, and of course, what we could be expecting as we are obviously starting off on a brand new week. But before we get into it, as always, just a quick disclaimer: anything on this channel is not financial advice. Always do your own due diligence and research when you are investing in crypto. So XRP is currently sitting at $2.29, up 6.7% as mentioned in USD, also up 4.7% in Bitcoin comparative. Market cap at $133.7 billion, and the 24-hour trading volume at about 4.3 billion. But yeah, let's kind of, go over some of the other stuff, and then, we'll pull out the chart. So you can see, Nasdaq calls for clearer digital asset rules in letter to the SEC. In a new letter, Nasdaq urges the SEC to create a regulatory framework that properly classifies digital assets, arguing they can fit into existing markets with the right oversight. So why are we seeing this happening? Because, of course, as far as the demand factor is concerned, it's definitely there. They see an opportunity, and they understand how, digital assets are, the future of finance. Because, of course, let's take a look at, the amount of interest, this digital asset space is really getting. Over the course of the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years, it's at a record height. Obviously, if you are, a pioneer, it used to be times, we used to dream of, and, we're actually living those times. People tend to focus on, small price gains, but you need to really understand how far, this market has come, and you're seeing this happening. And of course, under Paul Atkins, there is more clarity coming, and I think, we are going to get that framework for digital assets, in the very near future. But yeah, this is something, we don't want to be overlooking. But let's take a look at this. Speaking about interest, of course, CEO Hunter of Bitwise highlights a contrast in crypto market. Bitcoin approaching $94,000 while Google searches for Bitcoin remains near historic lows. He points out that this rally is in retail, driven by, the institutions, advisors, corporations, and nations entering the space, signaling a significant expansion in the types of Bitcoin investors. And, he pulled out the good old Google chart of, Google searches. I've used this on my channel, quite a bit, from the beginning of my channel's existence. And again, that kind of shows you where retail sits. And, now you're seeing these big CEOs coming in saying, we've been seeing this on the channel from the beginning. This is not anywhere near a retail rally. I've stated to you guys before, the retail interest we saw last year, Q4, and I could say, Q1 as well, a little bit of last year, we're nowhere near at that point. So what's really driving this? This is institutions coming in. Of course, now you could say, retail is focusing again, because of course, when you tend to see, Bitcoin go into the 23.6, market seeing double-digit gainers, of course, retail is going to flood in. But, from the masses, it is, the smart money coming in. And I've stated to you guys before, Bitcoin is being bought back. I'm sorry, it's being bought at such record levels, and, it's just way outpacing its overall supply, regardless of, the mining aspect. It just becomes more scarce over time. And of course, when you do see the halving part, it just becomes more scarce. So, you are starting to see a lot of interest coming in, and, this is what a lot of people overlook. But look at this, Ripple president Monica Long announced that Ripple will be providing the layer to enable banks to connect and utilize the XRP ledger. Remember that one-stop shop aspect that, obviously is something that, we've been discussing for quite some time. And speaking about that, look at this. Smoke brought up such a great point. I kind of want to share with you guys, then we're going to touch a base on the price. You can see public company reveals, XRP holding a smart money's bet becomes public. For the first time ever, a publicly traded company has officially confirmed XRP is in its corporate, treasury, signaling a major shift in its, institutions and how institutions are approaching the asset. Digital Commodities Capital Corp has revealed it holds 103,000 XRP, confirming what may in crypto space have quietly believed. While retail investors grew skeptical during the long legal battle with the SEC, smart money was quietly accumulating XRP in anticipation of the regulatory clarity, which of course is happening. This marks the beginning of a new chapter for XRP. With the Ripple SEC case near its resolution, XRP stands on the solid ground as a regulatory compliant, utility-driven asset ready for global adoption. A public company openly holding XRP sets a powerful precedent. It signals that other institutions may soon disclose similar positions and that XRP has already earned its place in these serious portfolios. Retail may have been shaken, the headlines may have been loud, but the value of XRP has never been lost on those who understand the long game. Totally agree about this statement. The long game is what you need to focus on. If you've done the three things, number one, always do your due diligence research. Number two is obviously investing where you can afford to lose and have patience. Then again, long goal is your number one key to follow, because of course you will see fluctuations happening within the price. You do see major shakeups. You do see bear markets. Long horizon is what you need to be focusing on. And anyone that's been accumulating XRP over the course of the last 7-8 plus years, I'm sure are happy at this point, because it has paid off. It's not overnight success, which of course a lot of people want. This type of generation, the generation we're growing in, they want instant gains, but that's just not how reality works. If it was, I promise you, everyone would be driving Lamborghinis and Ferraris. But anyhow, let's take a look at this. XRP is positioned to become one of the most important assets in the next wave of digital finance. Big stuff. But let's take a look at what's happening with the price as we are going into Monday morning. So you're looking at the dominance pulling down. I stated this in my H-bar update if you did watch it. If not, totally fine. You are looking at the dominance pulling down, but I did mention in that H-bar update, it's not like we haven't seen this level being retested before. We have. So obviously if we drop below the 64.10%, then we could be having a different conversation. But as of now, despite us pulling down, it's not a time to be getting overly excited. The dominance is still sitting at about 64%, which again is not low at all. BTC is looking amazing right now. Let's give it a refresh live. Bitcoin is currently sitting at $94,800, pushing up to 95K as we are recording this update. So obviously, if we break out of this resistance, I wouldn't even be surprised if we wake up to 96K Bitcoin tomorrow. So, BTC is looking amazing while dominance doing the complete opposite, pulling down. Altcoins are having a field day, as you can see this for yourself. So that is obviously amazing. XRP, on the other hand, is pushing up to $2.32 thanks to the dominance pulling down. If it continues to pull down, I think we break out of this key resistance that we're facing and push up to the 23.6. It's simple as that. We haven't been at the 23.6 pretty much since March 19th, almost a month and a half, which of course is not a small amount. And of course at that time it was just a little bit of a retest, and obviously we got rejected and you push back down to the 0.50 support line. So so far so good. Loving what I'm seeing here. Breaking out of this key resistance would mean we do see a push up to 251 and retest the 23.6, which again would be very, very impressive. But let me know down below what you guys think. Thank you for all your support. We'll see you later in Crypto ZX, and peace out.